Welcome, my name is Marcus and today we're going to be creating this. Okay, so now we're back here in After Effects. So let's start by creating a text layer. So let's click up here. Let's say cheese, or even cooler, Mr. Cheese. All right, I'm just gonna align this bad boy. Where's my everything? There we go. Let's just align this. Let's go to character and just increase the size. Maybe even go into paragraph, center it in the middle of the text. That's always awesome possum. And center in the middle of the screen. I'm going to choose a font that makes sense, like my font here, Bit Crusher. Let's just expand this a smidge. Let's give it some heft, some nice heft. There we go. And now we're going to pre-comp this text layer, Control-Shift-C, and just call this text. Whoopsie daisy, text. Bam. Now this text in here we're going to make 3D so we can modify it later on, or we can swirl around it. Now we're back in our main comp here, so let's start by collapsing the pre-comp here to make sure that we can orbit it in 3D space. You know, you can see it actually inherits the properties of the comp inside. That's what we want, baby. So let's go over here to Effects and Presets and let's write Radial Blur. Double click on that bad boy. Now the cool thing about Radial Blur is that when we set it to fading zoom, for example, it can go inverse as well as towards us. So we can actually make an effect that goes away from us. So let's start by saying let's 150, minus 150. I mean, look at that. Come on, let's just, all right. So now we can duplicate this text layer and this just deletes the Radial Blur from up here. And then we set the lowest layer to alpha matte with the upper layer. See, now it actually starts to look like the portal is going away from us and it's almost, only being seen through the canvas of the text, which is quite awesome possum. Now the downside is that if we orbit around it in 3D, nothing's happening. It's basically just a flat radial blur and that's just plain boring, right? So let's fix this up. So let's go up into layer, new, null object. Let's call this 3D rays. Oh yeah. And let's make it a 3D object. Now let's move this bad boy into space. Let's say, I don't know, 3000. So now if we actually orbit around it, you can actually see it's considerably further back in space than the Mr. Cheese text. But the cool thing about this is we can actually make the center of the rays follow that null in 3D space, making it look like we're actually looking through the letters. So let's start by doing this. Let's alt-click on center here. So we open up this little expression panel here, or expression thingamabob, thingamajig. And let's start by just pick whipping using this little lasso thing up to the 3D erase layer, like this. And then I'm going to write a little expression called toComp. And we're going to write a square bracket inside of it, and then 0, 0, 0. So what's really cool about this expression is that it turns 3D coordinates into 2D coordinates, or screen space coordinates. And now look at this. If we orbit around the text now, well, holy heck, it's actually following the origin of the 3D null, making it look like we're actually looking through, you guessed it, a portal. All right, so next step in the game here. So this radial blur here, we can do all manner of stuff with it. We can apply maybe a good old-fashioned fractal noise, because, we all like fractal noise, right? We can even maybe decrease the scale or something like this, make it quite dramatical. And let's put it before the radial blur. There we go, so we get the lines. Now we can just alt-click on evolution and let's write a little expression here. Let's write time times 350. So basically it's just multiplying this value over time, so we get some nice flickery flicker. So on to next step. So let's start applying some color to this bad boy. Let's say we could even apply a CC toner if we wanted to, We're gonna apply good old-fashioned CC toner here. We could give it some nice bluish stuff, thing stuff going on here. We can maybe just increase increase the contrast a smidge. We can increase the brightness a little bit, you know, something like that. The cool thing is now we can actually, this expression that we made there in the radio blur, we can apply this to every single type of effect. So if we can actually also make rays that go towards us. So let's duplicate this bad boy here. And let's say remove the alpha matte. And just delete all these effects because we're gonna do some new stuff. Oh yeah, we're gonna do let's do a simple choker. Double click on that bad boy. Now we're gonna write fill because we gotta fill some color. And let's say CC composite. There we go. And last but not least, the CC radio fast blur. The reason we're choosing the radio fast blur here is because it's considerably faster to render, but it cannot go below 0, which means that we can't create the effect that we see in our portal layer. Right? So let's just increase this a smidge here. So the reason I made all this stuff here, this is going to become obvious in a second. Let's hide the fill. So the simple choker, you know what, let's start with the CC composite. We can set it to silhouette alpha, which means it's going to mask itself out based on its original alpha. And now look at this, if we increase the choke, we can basically make a new outline. Isn't that just coolsies? And if we just apply a fill, because at some point when you choke something inversely, like outwards, it's gonna start taking 0 color, as in completely black. So you have to give it a new color or tint it so that you can actually see it. So let's make this, you know, this like light cyan. I mean, come on, who doesn't like cyan? Let's just apply a smidge of blur here, just a smidge of a smidge. We can maybe decrease this a smidge of a smidge. See, there we go. And now we go down to the first layer here. Press E twice to bring up the expressions. I'm just gonna copy this expression and I'll click on the center of the fast blur of the new layer and paste. Because now, you guessed it, if we orbit around this, it's gonna look like it actually follows along. And isn't that just cool bananas? All right, so now we got this. Now we can duplicate this quite a few times if we wanted to. We can make a new text like this. We can maybe like make it 90. We can give it some more bluish, tintish thingamabob, nice color, you know, so we really could start to get some color in there, some color. We can even apply a curves adjustment, double click. Go down to the alpha, just boost it a smidge, just give it a smidge there, you know, gives it a little bit of a boost. And let's, you know what, let's duplicate it one more time. And the bottom one, we can give it like really nice saturated blue here, like really some nice blueness here. Maybe even increase the distance a smidge, you know, make it quite dramatic. Gonna start applying a little glow layer now. I'm gonna go up into layer and adjustment layer. There we go. Just gonna call this glow. Bam. I'm gonna apply a good old-fashioned, you guessed it, glow. There we go. And I'm just gonna choose A and B colors instead of original colors because I like to be able to control it. And I'm gonna give it some cyan here. I'm gonna give it some more blueness here, some nice delicious blueness. I'm gonna lower the threshold so that it requires a lower luminance for it to glow up, something like this. Let's just decrease the amount of glow though. Let's take it down to 0.2 or something. I'm gonna duplicate this glow. Oh yes, look at that. I'm gonna pick whip the last color here and I'm gonna make this one a little bit more darker blue, you know, really get that. And the cool thing is, since everything is connected to the text layer in here, we can do basically whatever we want with the text. We can maybe even apply a turbulent displacement, a nice, where are you? Which is just, it's just distortion. As you can see here, it's basically just distorting the image based on a random noise. So I'm gonna set it down to like 30, yeah, maybe. And the amount down to like 15 or something. I'll probably adjust this. I'll click on evolution and then time times, I don't know, 150. So we get a little bit of a nice constant movement. And not only this, we wanted to reveal the text, right? So we're gonna apply a fractal noise. Double click on that bad boy. We're gonna put it below the turbulent displacement and we're gonna increase the contrast something fierce. Remember the word fierce. And we're gonna set and we're gonna set it to dynamic. Well, we can always play around with this. It depends on how you want it to fade on. So in like 4 seconds, we can set the brightness to completely white, something like this. And we're going to keyframe the brightness. I'm going to go to the beginning, and we're going to hold down Shift and pull it to the left until it's completely gone. Something like this. You can see there's actually still an outline around the text, and this is happening because the text is originally white. So we can actually go down here to the text color and just set it to black, and bam-a-lama ding-dong, it's gone. Let's apply an unmult effect. I will link to this effect in the description because it's free. An unmult basically eliminates the black from the image. As you can see here, it's taken away all the black values and leaving only the bright ones here. So that's awesome possum. Let's go back into Portal Text and look at this sexiness. I mean, you can see it glowing on like some sort of Michael Bay flick. I mean, come on, this is just awesome. So what else? Let's play around with the portal effect here. Look at this. Yeah, there we go. Let's play around with the contrast a bit. Let's apply a curves adjustment. Double click. I'm just going to place this before the toner, and I'm going to just fidget around with this a smidge, something like this. You know what? I'm actually going to change some stuff here. Instead of the CC toner here, I'm actually going to apply a tint. That's right, you guessed it, a tint effect. Double click. And I'm going to set this to maybe a very nice dark blue, something like this. I'm going to make the bright blue something like this-ish. There we go. All right, so let's start applying some particles here. So let's go up to Layer, New, Solid. Let's call this, well, Particles. There we go. I'm going to place it below all these glow text things, babbity boops. We're going to choose a system called Particle World, not number 2, but just number 1. Because, come on, let's face it, number 1 is always better. I'm just going to disable all this stuff here. And I'm going to play around with the producer here. I'm going to, first of all, just move it into C space, something like this. And I'm going to go down into physics and say direction, something like this. And we're going to have gravity absolute 0. And we're going to turn this towards us. So there we go. Nope. There we go. So plus 90. There we go. Now we're just going to expand. So let's start expanding the actual, there we go, the radius of this thing. So let's expand it something along these here lines. You know, we can increase the longevity by quite a few times, maybe 5, 6. Yeah, let's go down into particle. Let's change the color a smidge, make it some nice cyan. You guys at this point hopefully know that I like cyan, a little bit of cyanness. I mean, come on, let's just, all right. Let's just decrease the birth rate a bit. Let's take it down to 1 or something. Seems about okay. It's probably not the best, but we'll figure out something later. Gonna set it to screen mode so that it blends a little bit better. Now we're gonna duplicate this text layer down here, take it above the particles and set the particles to alpha matte. And see now if we go up into the orbit tool and orbit around, that's right, these particles are heading towards us in a very dramatic fashion. All right, so we can even play around with this even further if you like, you know, a birth rate maybe all the way down to 0.5 or something. And then we can have, let's say we just have to increase the velocity, maybe something dramatic. There we go. See, now it looks like a star system in the distance. Let's also create a 3D camera, you know, to create some nice camera movement on this bad boy here. So let's go up here into Layer, New, and Camera. And 2-node camera, that's more than fine. And I'm gonna also create a new layer null object to control the camera. And I'm gonna call this bad boy, you guessed it, cam_control. There we go. Switch nodes and set it to 3D object so that we can control the camera in all 3 dimensions. Let's press P and Shift R to bring up the position and the rotation of this camera. I'm gonna have some nice, you know, 7 seconds might be too much, but let's just start there. I'm just gonna keyframe this, and then I'm gonna go all the way to the start, and then go all the way close to this portal thingamajig, flappity floop. All right. So that's doing something like this. You can see we're getting close and just coming out here. It's just awesome possum. Very dramatic. And we can, you know what, let's take this keyframe all the way to the end. Why not? And let's just Control Shift K to bring up the velocity. and change the speed. I'm gonna set to 0 and 100. It's very dramatic, as you can see the animation curve here in Graph Editor, but it's I like it. I just like it. So now we're doing this. So now we also wanted to rotate a smidge. So let's say at second 5 it's done rotating. So let's find Z. Yes. Let's keyframe Z rotation, go all the way to beginning. Let's say, I don't know, 90. Now, you know what? Let's get some chromatic aberration. Let's get some nice RGB splits going, you know, really emphasize the lights of this entire effect. So let's take all these layers, Control-Shift-C to pre-compose, and let's call this 3D setup. Oh, whoops. 3, not asterisk. All right, there we go. Now we're going back to this new comp we created here. So this is quite a nice little simple setup. So I'm going to call this green. I'm going to duplicate this, call this R. I'm going to duplicate this and call this B. So we have RGB, but in completely awkward order, right? So it's RBG, just to be annoying. Now we're going to go over here and we're going to set channels. Double click. We're set channels. So, okay, so let's go up here and let's just say green is full off, blue is full off. So we only have the red channel. We're going to copy this, go down to blue, paste, and say, all right, we want, where are you? I want green to nothing. Actually, I want blue to blue. There we go. Blue to blue, red to nothing. And then paste it on the green one and say we want green to green. Where are you? Green to green and red to nothing. All right. I'm going to set all these layers, going down here to switches, set them all to add. So we're adding the exact same colors onto themselves once again. So now we're going to choose another cool effect called optics. Whoops, optics compensation. So this is emulating the distortion of a lens. So it might be hard to see. If I exaggerate it, you might be able to. It's twisting, and just isolate this. It's creating a distortion from the middle of the frame. The cool thing is we can also invert this. So I'm going to set this to like 16 for the red one. I'm going to copy this, go down into blue. I'm going to set reverse lens distortion. So it's, let's isolate the blue one. It's doing the exact same thing, but inverse. Instead of going being distorted inwards, it's being distorted outwards. We can actually maybe exaggerate this one a smidge more, something like this. See, now we're getting this nice little, if I zoom in here, a smidge here, we can see if we go over to one of the beginning frames, you can see here we're getting some green, some red, some nice little chromatic aberration or color difference, as they call it. So you can even dissolve the text at the end, as you saw in the original video. So maybe if you want, and you can do this in however way you want, you can maybe just dissolve it again through, if you press U to bring up the keyframes, you can just keyframe this again and make it dissolve away. Or you can dissolve it with your own new mask if you want that. You can just create your own little, if we make a new layer here, new solid, that's fine. I'm gonna call it alpha. I'm gonna hide it, Control-Shift-Alt-V to hide a layer. I love that shortcut. I'm gonna just take a mask here. I'm just gonna encompass this entire thing, and I'm gonna animate this mask, something like this, and then just collapse it, Control-T, something like yes. And I'm just gonna set this bottom layer here to alpha matte. And vroom. I mean, look at this piece of sexiness here. I mean, look at all the rays and the particles are flapping around. I mean, come on, if that isn't cheesy, I don't know what is. So I hope you guys found this useful, and I'm looking forward to all the different types of other ideas you guys are gonna have with being able to track things in 2D space but with 3D coordinates. And I'm looking forward to see what you guys can create, and please come with any feedback or comments that you guys might have. And you know what? I hope you have a wonderful day with some cheese.